Hello. He wore a blue tie. Wouldn't it have been better for him to wear a black or a gray tie? If you were the President of the United States of America and you found yourself in a conflict ridden zone where civilians, including innocent children and women, are losing their lives on both sides, what would you choose to wear? The color isn't the focal point. Wear whatever you like. But you would undoubtedly avoid wearing a tie that mirrors the colors of the Israeli flag. This is not just a fashion statement, it's a profound and impactful message. One that carries the weight of perceived bias from the leader of a nation that proclaims itself as the global torchbearer of freedom. Joe Biden is the 46th president in America or American history. I want to ask you, what would most American presidents do in response to the conflict in Gaza? Would they visit Israel during the war? None of them did. None of them did so in over 70 years of conflict. Even if they did, there is no problem with that. But do you know what millions of people in the Middle East and around the world expected when the President of the United States, a symbol of global leadership, arrived in conflict zone where children, civilians, women, and elders were losing their lives? What they expected, and perhaps you did too, was that the president's plane would not land in Israel while the conflict was ongoing, just out of respect for the lives lost and out of respect for America and the American people. Simply because the mothers and fathers who were fearful for the lives of their children, the elderly, the wounded, and the sick believed that the President of the United States was coming as a peace envoy, not as a war ambassador. What's been unfolding in Gaza over the past 12 days? What's been unfolding in Gaza over the past 12 days? Well, the answer is quite clear. Relentless airstrikes by Israel coming from all directions. That's the unfortunate reality. Do you know what's being targeted? It is not military stuff, like you might think, but homes, apartment buildings, and neighborhoods. Buildings where normal people live are being hit, and it's innocent civilians, often asleep, who are getting devastated. Many children and civilians have been killed, and over 13,000 people have been injured. But the worst part is that Gaza's hospitals either stopped working or are about to collapse. They are overcrowded and running out of essential medicines that are required for basic treatments. Electricity was cut off from Gaza from the very beginning of these events. And water has been cut off too for more than 2 million people. As for food, the World Food Program says there is not much left. You might wonder, where's the help? Why isn't it getting to the people in Gaza who need it? Well, there's a lot of aid sitting outside Gaza's borders, but it's not allowed in. Israel won't let it through. Can this be labeled as collective punishment, a form of genocide? Most certainly it is. What's even more disheartening is that the President of the United States is in the region, and yet humanitarian assistance is still denied entry. This hardly seems like a gesture of respect toward the President and the United States. So what about a ceasefire? Do you think the President would call for a break in the fighting while he's there? Surprisingly, no ceasefire has been announced. Does this really represent the American people on the world stage? Most likely it doesn't, and we all know that. More importantly, and perhaps you won't believe this, but Biden arrived amidst the bombing of a hospital run by Baptists, where more than 500 people died during the hospital's destruction. Are you angry? You certainly are. We've seen you in movies getting very angry when excessive force is used against innocents, especially in a hospital. Children, women, pregnant women, wounded, the sick, and the elderly being targeted. We know that you are angry. But is Biden, as the President of the United States, angry? We haven't seen his anger. He descended from the plane and a smile appeared on his face. You, as a free people, will demand an immediate investigation into the claims made by both sides. We know very well that you will do that, as we've seen it in the American values that Netflix is filled with. But Biden didn't call for an investigation into the claims. Instead, he said, and I quote, "I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion of the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you." He was addressing the Israelis. Unquote. Can you trust what he said? Don't you think the president is entirely favoring Israel without waiting to learn the whole truth? Do you realize how grave it is to jump to such a conclusion? It is as if the president, is allowing Israel to do even more terrible things to people without facing any consequences. This swift and hasty statement might spark more violence everywhere. It is like he's dragging all Americans into something extremely, extremely dangerous, which could lead to chaos worldwide. The president's statement is unacceptable by millions, and regrettably, his words are spoken on your behalf. Do you think this genuinely represents you? Most likely not. We are reaching out to you and all the free people in the world with this message to say that we respect the American people. However, the clear favoritism of the current US government towards Israel in this war reflects on you and your global image. It will affect your future relationships with the Middle East and the rest of the free world. We are here protesting, and honorable people around the world are demonstrating. But we expect you to publicly show your commitment to human values and the principles you all hold dear. We want to hear your disapproval of the current US government's role as a direct supporter of killing innocent civilians, children, women, journalists, and those suffering in what seems like a clear case of violence against people in Gaza. You should not accept having the blood of the innocent on your hands. And America should not go down in history with such a sad perspective. America has always had a certain bias, but it was mixed with kindness, diplomacy, and intelligence. Sadly, this administration seems to have forgotten all about kindness, diplomacy, and intelligence. And it's a shame that it has become a direct supporter of war crimes against innocent people. The blood of the people in Gaza is just as precious as the blood of people everywhere on earth. Help stop the war in Gaza, provide aid, and put an end to the killing of many people. These aren't demands that are very different from what the free world expects from who are supposed to stand up for freedom and human rights. I don't mean to startle you, but as we talk right now, while the president is visiting Israel, Gaza is under bombardment, and children and women are losing their lives just meters away from him. A father should never have to bury his own children. We all understand that. But it's happening now in Gaza. What is even more astonishing and heartbreaking is that at this very moment, while President Biden is nearby, some of the children of Gaza are writing their wills while the president is just a few meters away from them. Yes, your president. Thank you.